He's done a great job this week. So thank you so much for coming today and dealing with that lovely ear-splitting scream. We're really excited to have Laura with us today. I wanted to say that we usually have the PowerPoint here, but I don't. So make sure you look on the Twitter stream for her handle and use it on there. But she's with MD Anderson, and she has she's come and talked to us before about content.
Actually, that was Addie.
That was Addie. Okay, that's right.
But we used to work together.
Yes.
So.
They come, MD Anderson has come and talked about their content because they do an amazing job with content and have for a very long time. But another thing that she's been really experimenting with over the past couple of years is social advertising. And as you know, with Facebook kind of changing its algorithm, we are having more and more to use advertising to like pump up our social content. But we're going to talk beyond that. So I just wanted to, first of all, welcome you and say hi and thank you for coming. And tell us, I mean, what's your background? Give us a little idea of your content background and why you're using advertising. Kind of where did that impetus come from?
So I've been at MD Anderson about 5 years now and started advertising probably a little over 4 years. I was actually in a different department then, managing our prevention content and our prevention social media. So at the time we had a totally separate Facebook page for prevention, and we started advertising there to help grow our audience and also get our prevention messages out to more people because people don't think of MD Anderson as being a place for prevention. Since that time, I've moved to our communications office where I'm managing our corporate accounts, and in the last 2.5 to 3 years, I guess even a little before I started in this role, we've been doing Facebook advertising institution-wide, and actually that prevention page has been rolled into our corporate page. And initially, I think we were just doing it to get more page likes, but then since then, Facebook advertising has exploded. There are so many more things you can do with it now. So we do boost a lot of posts. We've also boosted events. At this point, we get all sorts of asks from people around the institution who want us to share all sorts of things. And we have to say no a lot of times because it's not right for our audience, which is mostly patients and caregivers and survivors. But, we do like to try and be able to throw people a bone. It's not fun to say no all the time. And so one of the ways we can do this is through advertising because we can do so much targeting with advertising so that it doesn't necessarily show to our normal audience. So Facebook has really been our bread and butter in terms of advertising because it's also our biggest platform for social, but we've also been exploring advertising in other ways. With Yelp, we now own our locations on Yelp, so we can put our branding on there. We control all the messaging. We have brand video on there, photos. We're able to respond to reviews. We're also about to start advertising Twitter. We've also looked into Pinterest and Instagram. And when I talk about advertising, it's not even just for our corporate accounts that our team manages, but there are some other accounts around MD Anderson, such as the Children's Art Project, which we're probably familiar with. They sell all the cue cards and stuff. And so that's probably where a lot of that Pinterest advertising will come in because it's perfect for that audience.
So that being said, you kind of are getting the lay of the land about it. I mean, you're not like a purchaser of advertising space. I kind of wanted to bring somebody in who was using it on a day-to-day basis instead of like a person who could say, oh, we sell advertising and this is how we do it. Because, I mean, that sounds very expensive in some ways. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And I also want to talk about how did you get your management to like buy into like advertising for a hospital on social media? I mean, I think that would be kind of hard. So could you talk a little bit about how you went about that and sort of, how you moved from just a pure PR sort of content play to a more, comprehensive like buy around your content?
Yeah. Well, I have an awesome director, so she gets it. It's everybody above that doesn't necessarily, but I mean, but I think that's true for a lot of people. At this point, you sort of have to pay to play on Facebook. Your content is not showing to more than, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5% of your audience on any given day. And we have a lot of important messages that we need to get out there. We also know that our competitors are advertising, and that's usually the biggest selling point, right? Cancer care is becoming increasingly a competitive space. So we have to advertise to be there. And that's not just true for Facebook. That's true on Yelp and on Twitter and elsewhere. So that's usually one of the biggest selling points, that we have to be there to pay, to play. But, so we advertise in the communications office. Like, we have a set budget, but then around the institution, when I meet with people, like I said, a lot of times one of the options that I give is, we could develop some content and we could boost it on Facebook or whatever. And with them, I'm just like, it doesn't take a lot of money, $50 or $100, and we can boost your post. And so that's no big deal. But to be honest, like, our budget is not that big. Marketing has money, but still even not as much as most hospitals, because we are part of the UT system. We're a state institution, so we don't have nearly as much money as one would think. I think when I started advertising the prevention stuff, we were spending less than $1,000 a year, even now, and that was 4.5 years ago. But even now, we're spending about $500 a month or so on Facebook. Twitter has been a harder sell because it is so expensive, but again, our competitors are there, and we have to be there to stay competitive.
So let's talk a little bit about expensive and what expensive actually means, because the question becomes, how does it work? Like, what are you paying for? Talk a little bit about CPC. Just kind of talk about what it is that you're paying for and how you pay for it.
Yeah. So on Facebook, since September 2014, we've spent a little over $6,300 on Facebook ads. And that's not just coming from our office. That's like around MD Anderson. And that includes about $700 just boosting 4 events for another department, and a little about $1,500 boosting posts, so boosting our content, and then the rest, so a little under $4,000 just on page likes, getting people to like our page so that then they're part of those brand and community engagements. And so in terms of our page like campaigns, right now we're averaging about 20.7 cents per like, which is really good. I worked with Facebook recently, and they said, they consider good 20 to 50 cents per like. And it does vary. There have been times, probably 2 years ago, when we were paying like 9 cents per page like. And then, there were times earlier this year when we were paying 16 cents, and sometimes it's closer to 30 cents. And it does vary depending on the content, the time of year. December is outrageously expensive because there's such a retail push, and we don't even advertise then a lot of times. So it really does vary. Expensive in terms of Twitter is a different beast. When I first talked to Twitter about a year ago about advertising, to work with them, they told us it was going to be about $8,000 a month for a minimum of 3 months. $24,000, which is a ton of money, and it's a ton of money in our world, a whole lot. Since then, they've actually opened it up, and you can put a credit card in, and you don't have to spend as much money. You can spend as little as you want. We haven't started using it yet, so I can't really tell you how much you really have to spend to make an impact. And actually, when I talked to them just the other day, they said, well, now you have to spend $15,000 a month to actually even talk to us. So if you want help from Twitter, it's going to be a lot more expensive now. Expensive in other areas, Yelp. So for us, it's a little different because we have 10 locations that we're paying to own. And I think it's about $50 a location, but we get a discount because we have 10 locations. But on the whole, it's not that much. LinkedIn, we got $50 in free ads, and I thought, let's try it. And that's just ads, like promoting our content. So like boosted posts on Facebook. For $50, we got 22 engagements, which is really expensive. So it does vary. I've also heard Pinterest. This is the time to get in because there are not a lot of people using it right now. I had heard $1 to $5 was good, but then I looked into it a little more last night, and the recommendation is to bid as low as you can because it is a bidding system. Start low, see how it does, and you may end up paying less than $1 per click through to your website.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too. And there's other things that are kind of coming up too. Instagram for sure. Instagram has been slowly moving towards advertising, and now they have some products out there that they're only giving to their current advertisers. But I think in another month or two, maybe 3, you're going to see that open up as well. And interestingly enough, when I was doing the reading about it, they're going to open it up through the Facebook bidding system. So it's going to be done with Facebook, which I think is really smart on their part because they're going to make a ton of money that way. But yeah, I just feel like now is the time to really understand this whole advertising thing. So now that we've talked about a few of the mechanics and costs, what kind of posts would you put money on? I mean, do you put them on all of them, or kind of give us your strategy around that?
Yeah. So like I said, for Facebook, we have a set budget every month. And I would say the majority of that we focus on page likes. And those are more retargeting campaigns. So people who come to our website, we follow them back to Facebook. But the rest of it, probably $200, $300 a month are boosting posts. And then there are other people around the institution sometimes who want us to boost their content. So I would say in any given month, we probably boost between 5 and 7 posts. So not that many, considering we post 2 to 3 times a day, 7 days a week. As far as what we boost, I always wait to see how a post is doing before boosting it. Like sometimes in my mind, I'll say, this is a post I'm planning on boosting, but I don't ever want to boost something if it doesn't have engagement, right? Because if it's showing up in people's feeds, they're more likely to engage with it, to like it, to comment on it if they see that other people have already done that. So sometimes, I'll even wait 2 or 3 days before boosting it. But as far as what we boost, sometimes it is because someone else wants us to boost something and they're giving us some money to do it. And then that allows me to really target it so it doesn't necessarily reach our audience, or so that it reaches some new audience that we want to reach. But then a lot of times it's just our best stories about our brand, exciting things that we're doing, some new initiative that we have. But I mean, it's all, it really depends on what we're doing. But ultimately, we're boosting our best content and the most important messages that we need to get out there.
Yeah. And how do you start with that? Like, do you put like $5 a day, $10 a day? I mean, kind of what is your current way of doing that? Because you can start as low as $5 a day on Facebook, for example.
Yeah. So usually I like to do the boosts for a set period, and I'll set a certain amount of money. And because we have a small budget, that's just a little easier to manage. So, I mean, it depends on the content, but we rarely spend more than $50 to $100 boosting a post unless somebody else is paying for it. And usually, I'm happy to spend other people's money. But, and it depends on what it is, but usually we'll do it for like a 1 to 3 day duration. Sometimes we'll do it a little longer. I just boosted a video for about 10 days because it was National Cancer Survivors Day, and so lots of people, had cancer on the mind, and it was sort of the perfect video to boost during that time. But usually a short period tends to be more effective. But when I did boost that video for 10 days and it was spending like $16 a day, we were seeing activity and engagement around it a lot. But I think something important to think about when you're boosting posts is you have to constantly be monitoring, because you are going to get more engagement, you're going to get more comments, and obviously you want to be responding to those, whether they're good or bad. Because the worst thing that can happen is that you're boosting a post and you get a lot of negative, or not, it doesn't even have to be a boost, it could be any sort of ad, that you're getting a lot of negative feedback and it's just sitting out there, because that's not doing you any favors at that point.
Yeah. So yeah, and that's interesting. So you talk about boosting posts, and we wanted to talk a little bit about how you do that. So do you just the little thing, I'm sure you've all seen it, the little boost button. Do you just click on that boost button and go for it, or do you do something different?
I do sometimes, but a lot of times I just do it in the ad manager. There is a lot of targeting you can do if you just click the boost button. There's even more that you can do in the ad manager. And the cool thing now is you can create different audiences, and you can tell Facebook which audience you want to use to target it to. But it really depends. If it's something as simple as just boosting it for our followers or our followers and their friends, a lot of times I'll just click the boost button on our page. But if it's anything more complicated than that, then I'll usually go into the ad manager to do it.
Yeah, one of the things about the ad manager that I really like is that it has different ways of targeting in it, not just about the people you're reaching, but also it has some really cool stuff for the kinds of interactions that you want. So they'll focus it towards people who are likely to say click if you want them to click through. So if you want them to click through a link, like if you're boosting a link on your page, you really should go through the ad manager, because they're just going to show it to people that want to engage. So all of a sudden you'll get a lot of likes and comments, but maybe you wanted them to click through and go to your website. So you really needed to go to ad manager first. So have you kind of used it that way to like what you want them to do? Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm with any, whether it's a boost or any kind of campaign, if you go into the ad manager, you start by picking your goal, whether it's website clicks or, event RSVPs or more people seeing a video, more people engaging with your posts. So yeah, I mean, you always start with that goal in mind, because if you don't have that, if you're not starting there, then I don't think you're going to get what you want out of it. Plus, that allows Facebook to optimize it so that you're spending less money than you would if you always boost a post, or if you always do, a paid setup ad. Maybe that's not the cheapest thing to do. So choosing the best option, I think, is really important for getting your costs down.
Great. And then as far as likes on your page, there's some controversy over going out to try to get a lot of likes for your page, especially since Facebook has depreciated likes quite a bit. Because just because you like a page, as you know, it's not going to show up in your feed. So can you kind of explain what your thinking is on the likes, and sort of how you target it? Because I think part of it is in the targeting, right? So could you talk a little bit more about the deeper parts of targeting in the ad manager?
So yeah, I hate this when people say that they don't like you buying likes, because it is all about how you do it. Most of the ad campaigns that we do, all of the ad campaigns we do at this point to get people to like our page, are basically retargeting campaigns. And retargeting is Facebook basically gives you a pixel to put on your website, and when people go to your website, it'll follow them back to Facebook. And you can choose whether you want anybody who's been to your website, whether it's today or 6 weeks ago, or you can choose people who maybe were there 90 days ago or 30 days ago or 15 days ago or whatever you set, that they haven't been back since. You can also retarget to people on your email list, so that you're just targeting people who are following, who receive your emails, but maybe they're not following you yet on Facebook. So I think those are very valuable, and they can be very cost effective, because the benefit there is you're getting people who are already interested in your brand or whatever it is that you're doing. And it gives you another outlet to communicate with them and keep them in the loop. I do think maybe it would be a little different if we just ran ads, to everybody in the city of Houston, asking them to like our page. They might not be those might not be the most valuable likes, because the truth is we're a cancer center. It's not going to be relevant all the time to everybody in Houston. But if it's people who are already interested in our brand, who've already been to our website, maybe they're looking to make an appointment, but they're still deciding where to seek treatment, that's very valuable to us. There's also another option that I think is really cool, and they're called lookalike audiences. And what you can do, you can upload your email list, or you can do it with the people who come to your website, and you can choose a percentage. Lower is better, I think 1%. And you can tell Facebook to basically serve up your ads to people that look like the people who have come to your website, or who have followed your email list, or who subscribe to your email list. And I was very skeptical about this at first. The first time I did this, it was like 40 cents a like, and I was but then it's gotten better and better. And actually, when I worked with Facebook recently, they said it's better to do it with your email list, because those are people who've sort of already bought into your brand a little bit, if they're willing to subscribe to an email, rather than people who've come to your website, because there are all sorts of reasons people may come to your website. But the cool thing about that is those are people who would probably be interested in your brand, because they have so much in common with the people who are interested based on the retargeting stuff. And so it's another way to reach those people. And those have been exceptionally, exceptionally successful for us. And a lot of times they're even cheaper than, ads targeting people who come to our website, for example. So Facebook, Facebook knows everything about you and what you do. Yeah.
What does that mean for your privacy for your users? Do you have a privacy policy on the website and opt-out option? How does that manage, especially in healthcare?
Yeah, so with emails, we don't put in any information in the list except for emails. So we have no, names, ages, addresses, any of that business. As far as the pixel tracking, we do have a privacy policy, but at this point, it's sort of standard practice. It's not just happening on Facebook, right? Marketing does it with banner ads, with all the ads that you see online. So I think at this point, people just sort of accept that as the way it is. I mean, every now and then we'll get a crazy message or post that'll be like, I don't know why I'm getting your messages on Facebook, and we'll say, just unsubscribe, or from our page, or just mark it as irrelevant. And actually, the cool thing is you can put in a list of people that you don't want to target. So if you have their Facebook IDs, you can put them in there and tell Facebook not to serve up ads to those individuals anymore. So if you do have problems, that's an option. But I think it's just become so common at this point that people accept it.
And it can be a little freaky. I mean, I have a friend who is a big retargeter, and our other friends will say, why is this so-and-so's face always in my Facebook? Like, why does he keep bothering me? He's my friend, not like, why is he marketing to me? But I do think that it's not as blunt of a tool as it once was. And if you have like a group of people, as you do, because I know you, that you're marketing to specifically, also it has to do with the content. And we haven't really talked a lot about the content yet, but let's kind of switch to that, because I think we have a lot to say about the content, because there's some restrictions on content, especially in Facebook. There's a 20% rule. You can't have more than 20% of your content, or the content on the picture, be words. It has to be image. So let's talk a little bit about that, the content. And some content does not feel like it's advertising, or it doesn't have to be even advertising.
Related to that, but going back to your question, I do think that it's also in the content, right? It's not like we're saying make an appointment today. We would never run an ad like that. It's very soft, and things like find hope, support, and insight for your cancer journey kind of things, and pretty pictures and whatever. So it's a very soft ad usually. Always. But and on Twitter, there are actually restrictions. So you can do a lot of targeting on Twitter. We could not serve up ads or tweets to somebody that says, I was just diagnosed with cancer. That is prohibited. It's not even possible. So as far as content goes, it all starts with content. And that's content in two places. One, you have to have good content on your page before you're doing any sort of advertising. And that's, you want to boost your best post, but the hope is that people will then go back to your page if they see that one post, or if you're asking them to like your page. And if you're not posting consistently, you're not engaging with comments, you're not posting good content, that's a missed opportunity. But I think the content in the ad also has to be really powerful. Facebook recently said that they really want ads to seem no different than other content. So it should not seem like a sales pitch. It needs to seem organic. It needs to seem like something you would want to share with your friends, because you can share ads with your friends. And that's not just boosted posts. That's any sort of ads, even, ads that get you, that send you away from Facebook, or that ask you to RSVP for an event. So it should really feel no different than any post that you would post on your page. It needs to have beautiful photos. It needs to have great copy, or maybe it's not a photo. You can also include videos now. And like I said, we recently did one, and it did exceptionally well. We spent $100 and it got more than 12,000 views. But part of the reason it did so well is it was a music video. And that kind of thing is special. It resonates with people in a way that a lot of other content does. So it's a matter of finding the right content, but I think it's also a matter of finding the right content for that moment, right? That was, like I said, during National Cancer Survivors Day, was that week. So, that's on the minds of people. Just like, during the holidays, you want to have relevant content to get to what people are thinking about at that time, but you don't want it to get lost in the mix. So really put a lot of time and thought into the creative, but it also can't just be one piece, right? You can't just have one image and one set of copy. You want to be testing everything, multiple photos, testing that against the copy. But also you need to have multiple versions, because as you'll want to be looking at how your ads are doing constantly. I'm in there every day. You want to see how your ads are performing, and you can really dive deep to see how they're performing. You can see, what demographics are responding, whether it's men or women, 18 to 24, 25 to 30, so all different ages, and you can adjust your targeting. You can, serve up ads with a woman in a photo just to women. You can even, serve them up to people who went to Texas A&M with, so that are, where the messaging is specific to people who might be Aggies, for example. There are all sorts of ways that you can target. So you want to make sure you're doing that and really serving up sort of the most personalized creative so that people feel like it's meant for them, so it doesn't feel forced on them. But in looking at those metrics, I think it's also important to be looking at, you can look at the relevance of your ads. So Facebook will give you a little number 1 through 10 that tells you the relevance of your ads to your audience. And I can't remember, I think it's after it's been served up to about 1,000 people, it starts showing that score. Facebook told me they think a 5 or better is good. For us, I tend to think like an 8 or better is good. I set the bar high, or a 7 or better is good, because the relevance score is based on how people interact with your content. So if people are reporting it as not relevant to them, or that they're not interested in it, or they're reporting it as spam, or people are seeing it but not engaging it with it, that's going to get you a lower relevance score. And that's when it's time to, switch things up. And you can, even while the ad is running, you can switch out the copy, you can switch out the photo. The best thing to do is maybe switch out one and switch out the other. But if things really start to slow down, the algorithm can stop working. Just like everything else on Facebook, those ads are served up based on an algorithm. And if the algorithm stops working, and Facebook has told me this happens, just stop it and start it over in a new campaign. You may have to recreate them, you may have to make some changes, but that's okay. I've done that before, and a lot of times the exact same ads will then be, 10 cents cheaper per like, just because I took the time to do that. And that can be valuable, or sometimes it's a matter of putting it in a different ad set or just slightly tweaking the targeting. So
I do want you to go into ad sets. So those of you who haven't done the advertising before, you can load up more than one photo at a time. So can you explain ad sets and sort of how those kind of appear and work?
Yeah. So I do feel like the best way to really understand Facebook ads is just to go in there and use them. But when you can set up a campaign, and the campaign is like all the money you're spending on whatever your campaign is. And then within there, you can set up ad sets. And each ad set is basically, they're all going to share the same targeting, but the ads within there could be different. So they might have different photos, they might have different copy, So, each ad set, each ad may look a little different. And that's really where you're doing the testing within the ad set. Within a campaign, you may have multiple ad sets, and you might see that one ad set is performing better than the other, and you could perform one ad set or pause one ad set, but sometimes it's just a matter of even pausing ads within a set.
Yeah, and also Facebook will do that too. So they'll start to serve out the ad. Like if you put in 5 different ads in an ad set and started running it, Facebook will oh, hey, look, this one's doing really well, and they'll dampen down the ones that aren't doing so well, and they'll bring up the one that's doing really well with the engagement or whatever your goal was, obviously because they want to make more money for the clicks, right? So they do that almost automatically. I'm not saying you shouldn't look at it because she's on it, she's doing it herself, but you can also, Facebook will help you see which one is doing the best, and then if you have one that's 30 cents a click and the other one's 50 cents a click, you can dampen down the 50 cents one and maybe the 30 one will come up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I do pause ads sometimes, pause ads within an ad set or within a campaign sometimes, because yes, certain ads will start doing better, but then I'll see 1 or 2 in there where it's 64 cents a like, and I think, well, the other ones are, it's not serving those up as much, but I don't want to be paying 64 cents a like when I could be paying, 16 cents a like for something else. So that's why I'll pause those.
Yeah. So how many people here actually use Facebook or other kinds of online social advertising? Can I see? Great. We've got about half the room, right? So I would like to actually open this up to questions and discussion. like things that you think are working too. We'd like to hear that. And also any questions you might have, like maybe you're struggling, like, should I start this and when and how? So I'd like to start that right now and then see where we go from there. So do we have questions going on about like where you're at? Yeah.
How do you keep like your ad to stay at the top of people's news feed? If like say they like your page, sometimes I guess like I've had people say that I don't see the event or the ad or anything like in the news feed. Is it just like to get that traction? Like is it?
Oh, yeah. Are you talking about people that have liked your page? They say, I don't see your stuff.
Right.
Is that what you're saying? Does ads help with that?
Yeah.
Do ads help with that?
And as well, how do you keep that ad at the top
Of the newsfeed. So how do you keep the ad at the top of the newsfeed? And, you know, can you do that?
I don't think you can keep the ad at the top of the newsfeed per se. You can't control the newsfeed in that sense, but you do boost posts. And one of the reasons you might want to boost posts is you can boost a post to your audience or to your followers and their friends. And so that's a way to get your posts, more of your posts to reach more of your audience.
So it'd go from like 3% to what?
Yeah, 3% to, 10 or 11% or, higher. But, that might just be that one post. Although a lot of times I do see when we boost a post, the next few posts after that will continue to reach more people, which is nice. And the reason that happens is, and part of the reason people might not be seeing stuff in your feed, or in their feeds, even though they follow your page, is because Facebook's algorithm that determines what shows to whom is based in part on whether people are engaging with your content, right? Whether they're liking, commenting, sharing. And if they're not doing those things, whether it's with the boosted post or an unboosted post, they're not going to see your stuff. But if you're paying to boost, it's more likely to show it to them. And hopefully, if the content is good, then they will want to engage with it. But that may be a reason that you need to boost more often. But, it all goes back to the content. And it's not just the boosted content, but all of the content.
Yeah, and the content is the big part. And the other part that I think is interesting is most recently, in the last month or so, Facebook used to show anything that somebody liked. So if you liked a piece of content, it would then show in your newsfeed. That doesn't happen anymore. They completely took that out. So now you kind of have to share something. So if I share something with all of you, then the people that are following me, then it explodes in everybody's timeline, maybe. I mean, depending on the content and if you then like what you see. Do you know what I'm saying? So the algorithm, obviously, we don't know exactly how it works, but right now sharing is a huge, huge part of that. So getting your audience to share your stuff, yeah, that's really big. So So the question is, she said that she didn't want to boost a post that isn't doing well, and could you elaborate on that?
Yeah. I don't always or even usually wait a couple days, but I will at least wait a little while. And I have gone back and boosted posts that are a little older. And you'll see like New York Times and other publications do this all the time. But you really want to, if you're going to pay the money to boost a post, you're paying because you want people to engage with your content, right? And if they're not engaging when you're not paying, right? If it's not getting any comments or shares or likes, that may be a sign of how the boost is going to do, that they're not going to engage with it then. But also, you're more likely to comment on a post or share it if you see that other people are also engaging with it. So you don't necessarily have to wait 2 days, but you want to, and a lot of times our stuff starts doing well immediately, so within, a few minutes to an hour, I can say, okay, we're going to boost this. But, give it a little while. But sometimes it is a matter of just boosting it later on. And that can also just be so it has a longer life, right? Like something did really well that we talked about 2 days ago, but we want to keep that conversation going. And so we'll, boost it again a little further down the line.
Yeah, because it tends to decay over time in the algorithm. I mean, just by time, because it ages, if you will, in the algorithm. So does that answer your question? Okay, great. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I have a question about, on the boosted post, you said you can target how you're boosting it. We work with an outside company, you're not working with an advertising when we take it back in house. And I found that when we worked with them, they were really, oh, you should be boosting and doing ads, and they got us to spend some money with Facebook. The boost posts, the people that were commenting were 100% not our customers, and were saying really random things, and it did not look very helpful. So I'm wondering if they just didn't boost the right people.
That sounds like not targeting, but she asked that they had an outside company helping them boost their posts, and the people that came to their page were irrelevant to their company. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a targeting issue. You can, like I said before, you can target just the people following your page or just the people following your page and their friends. And it all depends on how much you trust their friends, But if you're targeting towards people who are a totally different audience, maybe they're not following your page, or maybe it's, people all in a certain area, like Houston, you're going to get comments that aren't necessarily relevant. So, and you can always pause a boost. But I do think it's best to start with good targeting and really know what your goal is. But the truth is, anytime you boost a post, you're always going to get some crazy comments. It's just, like even the people that follow our page when we boost a post, it's always going to bring out a little crazy, but that's just, even you can have that even with a post that does really well organically, right? The further a post reaches, the more likely it is to reach somebody who maybe has had a negative experience or is just not quite all there,
And also, starting at the ad manager, you're going to do a lot better. So like I had a client that needed to do, they had a really good following in a specific geographical area. And they needed to they were going to another geographical area to do the same thing they did there, but everybody following them was from the other geographical area. So the whole purpose of our campaign that we did for them around that was to build the new geographic area, because they're going to have that event there every year. So, you've got to know what your goal is, right? So in that case, we were able to pinpoint target, like we want to pinpoint target this zip code around this area. So we geo-targeted that. But you can also do interests, location, and I do like what you said, like if you have any emails of people that are already your customers, if you can upload them in there and do some retargeting, that's a really, really powerful thing. And then once you have them in there, you can do that. People like these people, which I really do. It's called custom audiences, and it's just in the back of the end of the ad manager, you just click on custom audiences and you kind of pull that together. So I do think that that's really important, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
So do you do that? How do you target beyond that? Do you vet it?
Targeting is complex. I like to start broader and then narrow it down. And that goes back to looking at those metrics and seeing what's performing well. For example, we boosted some events that were in some of our regional areas, like Katy and the Woodlands. And those weren't necessarily just for people who were fans of M. Anderson, right? We wanted to include the whole community. And so with those, I was a little worried. It's a little trickier. Because we were targeting people in certain zip codes, but then we also, our marketing agency has a sense of who the audience is that they want to reach for those events. And Facebook, you can dive really deep. You can get down to, the type of device people are on, their age, whether they have kids at home, whether they're single or married, whether they like shopping or the Bible or luxury goods or travel. You can even get down to where they work. So you can get down to all those levels, and then you can go back into those reports and see who's responding. And if you see certain people aren't responding to your ads, or that it's a lot more expensive when they respond, those are the ones that you pause, or you create different ads for those people and see what they respond to.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point you just said. You can find out people that work in Houston but live in Katy, and then if you're like a cab company, those would maybe be your audience or, transportation. I'm just saying, you have to think about who you are and who you're trying to reach. You have to know your audience. So, next. So does anybody else have anything as a question or a thought? Yeah.
So speaking of knowing your audience, so I'm trying to, we have the company that I'm doing social media for is very, very niche. And a lot of our clients are mostly on Facebook, but then when we try Twitter or Pinterest or anything else, we don't really get much response. So at that point, I mean, what's a good, is it just better to just abandon those altogether or just, you know?
Interesting question. So she says that they have a niche audience. They're getting good response on Facebook, but not Twitter and Pinterest and other places. Should they just abandon those social properties if they're not getting any response?
Not necessarily. You know, we are on a lot of different platforms, and while our main audience is patients and caregivers and survivors, it is different. Pinterest is different. People aren't going there as much to, you know, find out about cancer treatment. That's where we share a lot of prevention information, for example, because people love recipes, right? They love exercise. So it's a matter of figuring out what you have to offer on those different platforms. Twitter is slightly different for us because it is a lot of patients, but it's also, there's a large healthcare professional audience, a lot of doctors, and, you know, other healthcare professionals. So I think it's a matter of targeting, adapting your content and adapting your strategy. But yeah, Facebook might be your bread and butter, and that's not a bad thing. But I think you want to be where, you want to focus your energy on where people are, but you want to be mindful that things do shift, right? And you're missing an opportunity potentially if you just say, well, let's just leave Pinterest. Because the truth is, you may not see people engaging with your content on Pinterest, but they may be pinning your content, in which case you need to be there. But as far as your ad dollars go, Facebook, I think, is definitely the largest social ad platform and the cheapest, and probably the one you can do the most with right now. So if that's where your audience is, I would say definitely focus your ad efforts there.
Actually, yeah, that's what I meant, not a bad,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, keep in mind with all of these, you can do a lot of targeting. So, you know, if you feel like Pinterest hasn't worked, it may just be a matter of shifting your targeting a little. I mean, they're still very much in the new phase, so it would be a good time to try it out. Both Facebook and Twitter, though, have exceptional targeting because they're looking at everything you do, who you follow, what you engage with, as well as all the information you've provided about yourself and all the posts that you have on there. So it can also really be a matter of just targeting better and testing things out.
Yeah, and over in the corner there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm a fashion blogger, so one thing that for our social media outlet is to use hashtags. And so I was wondering how you use hashtag in your social media and how you can target an audience to do that.
So she's a fashion blogger and she uses hashtags to target her audience in fashion because it's actually a big push there. Certainly in Instagram, for sure.
So with Facebook, we don't target people based on hashtags. And like I said, we haven't actually started Twitter. But with that, you can target based on people using certain hashtags. So I think that would be good. Our strategy at MD Anderson with hashtags is we have one hashtag that we want everybody to use, and it's end cancer. So we actually include that in all of our messaging, in all of our social posts, and all of our ads, because it reinforces our mission. But as far as targeting with the hashtag itself, we haven't really done that yet. And I actually know with Pinterest, your ad will get rejected if it has more than one hashtag, and they really prefer for you to focus more on like a branded hashtag as opposed to hashtag diet, hashtag fashion. So
Yeah, I think that also with the hashtags, and by the way, would you say end cancer? That's what we've got. So everybody hashtag end cancer here today. So we can give you a good like boost at work for coming out here. But I mean, the truth is that there's a lot of different ways to use hashtags. One is branding, of course. The other one, like for SMDHOU today, is a community, right? So how do we keep a community together and talking to each other? And then there's the way that I honestly am just learning myself on Instagram, where you're bringing in people that like sunsets. So you like hashtag sunset, and you'll get 1 million people that come and look at your sunset and like it or whatever. So million, I'm saying. We're like 22 usually or something like that. But anyway, sometimes I over exaggerate a little bit. So, but my point is that, you know, hashtags are not necessarily tied. I mean, that's more of an organic way of bringing people in that doesn't include advertising. But that being said, I do want to talk a little bit about advertising content versus content. So the 80-20 rule, we kind of brushed over it earlier. Can we talk just a little bit about that? Because I don't want to get away without completely talking about that. Because I thought she told me a really interesting thing about their logo on the blue background. Anyway, could you talk a little bit about that?
I was just thinking we didn't talk about that yet. Yeah. So be mindful. Facebook does have some advertising rules. The biggest one probably is that in any graphics, and this is whether it's like a link preview or you're uploading an image, no more than 20% of the image can be text. So I was telling Cammie, the quote, like the copy above the ad, that doesn't count, but within the image, no more than 20% can be text. And there's actually a grid tool that Facebook has that you can go on their website and you can upload your graphic and you can see, and Cammie tweeted it. You can see if the text fits in there. And it's just a grid. And we've had things that have gotten past the grid before that then get rejected, and we've had things that got rejected in the grid that got passed. So I don't think it's totally foolproof. I don't think that they check everything, but the grid is interesting because of, you know, like one letter might go over into the next grid, and then they count against, that counts against you. But the weird thing that I've noticed is, you know, so we have that, hopefully, you know, we have a cancer with a strike through that's part of our logo. It's on everything we do. It doesn't usually get rejected in ads, except on the color blue. So, you know, try things out, see what works. You know, obviously their system is not foolproof. You know, there are probably ways to work it. The other thing I forgot to mention when I talked to you, we recently had an ad rejected that was a link preview, and it was a prevention piece about household toxins. And I wrote down exactly what it said because it was very disturbing. Facebook rejected this ad. Because now I don't have it in front of me, but it said something like the toxins in your house, some toxins in your home may surprise you, and Facebook rejected it. And I was like, why? So I emailed them back, and they were back, and they sent me their rule, which was not helpful because it tells you that you can't target toward, you know, you can't tell people, you can't say something about, you know, people being fat. You can't, you can't say negative stuff that's discriminating against people. And I was like, this is not discriminating against people. I'm sorry. And I even wrote back and I was like, this is based on scientific evidence. We're at a hospital. I'm just trying to understand for future reference. And they wrote back, and I still didn't get a very clear answer, but I think maybe taking out the word your would have helped, because they did say something about, you know, anytime that you post something about a person's physical characteristics, that could get rejected. And I was like, well, that's great because we're a cancer hospital. We are always talking about a person's physical state. That's the only thing that's gotten rejected so far. I actually want to try and retest it soon with the language. It's a little different, but I'm worried that the word toxins may be non-negotiable with them. So be mindful of that.
So questions? Yeah, over here.
Because of the HIPAA rules, how closely related are you to your compliance and legal?
So how do you work with compliance and legal to deal with the HIPAA regulations?
We call them all the time, but everything we do in the communications office, we get HIPAA. We get media releases. We do not share anything that we do not have those forms for. You know, unless it's not a patient story, you know, if it's a story about research, that's different. But yeah, we do that, and we make sure everybody else does that too. We won't share anything on our pages that could get us in trouble. So we're very mindful of that.
I saw something over here. Was there a hand on this side? Oh, back. Oh, hey, Jace. So how are you measuring what you're doing in advertising and bringing it back to ROI?
At this point, it's still a little tricky. We don't have as good of a system as you do at Methodist yet, but you know, we do look at the number of patient referrals that we get, so the number of people completing a self-referral form as a result of coming to Facebook and our different social channels. It's a lot more of that from Facebook than elsewhere. We also look at donations that we receive that are a direct result of somebody coming from Facebook or Twitter. So we're getting there. At this point, though, for us, a lot of it can't fully be measured. A lot of our goal is brand awareness. Because we're a cancer hospital, you might not need to come to MD Anderson today, but we hope that, you know, God forbid, you or a loved one are ever diagnosed with cancer, you think, hey, I saw that ad from MD Anderson, I saw that story, even if it's 5 or 10 years down the line. So that's a little trickier to measure.
Yep. Any other questions? Does anybody have any things that they want to share with the group that they're doing that they think are working exceptionally well in social advertising? We'll put that back on you, Jason. What are you doing?
I was just going to say, we've had stuff rejected too, and the example you gave is probably because of the two things you said. So you said your, and then toxins, they probably rely on like pseudo, sciencey kind of stuff.
Yeah, your toxins. Yeah, and also, I mean, hey, I don't think that the research that Facebook is doing on negative and positive advertising doesn't affect like what they're doing here, because they've done a lot of things to say that if you say negative things, you're going to get less engagement. So I think that may have something to do with it too. Yeah.
We're actually ad directories on photographs. So like we're targeting people who have a certain disability, and all the pictures are of the same sort of disability. We're getting rejected.
So that's probably the same thing.
So they're getting rejected. I'm going to say it so that the people that are listening in online. So they're getting rejected based on running photos of certain disabilities. Are you a nonprofit or what's your?
It's like your disability was not rejected for a law firm.
Okay, for a law firm. Okay, so it's about disability if you're a law firm. So they're getting some pictures rejected based on similar disability content.
I mean, I would think that that's probably from the same thing, right? That it's people with a certain physical condition, which I think is really crappy. Because yeah, you're trying to help them, and right, and that's so. I don't know what to tell you there.
I would say, go kill the trolls because they are ruining it for everybody. That's really what that is. Yeah, back there. Yeah, so she was saying that social advertising to her sounds like scare tactics and. Oh, the toxin in your health, yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's true. So, I mean, there's that, right? So, I don't know. I mean, we're going to have to, navigate the waters of this as we go forward, I think. As professional communicators, I think that we have to really work on our language and our words and the moving target called Facebook, because that is the other part of this, right? Yeah.
I actually have a question to kind of touch back on the HIPAA stuff. Do you have some sort of checklist, especially when you're talking about personal stories, things to check to make sure you're not releasing any PHI?
So do you have a checklist that you can follow in order not to release any personal information? Kind of go through that.
Yeah. Anytime we share a personal story, the patient has to complete a HIPAA, and they have to complete a media release. And so we have a form that our compliance officers and legal have put together, so it includes, I think HIPAA is there are 18 different possible identifiers, but that form doesn't include all those. But we try to cover as much as we can anytime somebody, checks off those boxes, and not just for all the identifiers, but also the possible ways something could get used, so that we don't necessarily have to go back to them later. We just try to cover ourselves as much as possible, but there is never a patient story that we share that we don't have a HIPAA for, because our office develops our web content. We also develop our patient stories and our CancerWise blog. So HIPAA, we live and breathe HIPAA.
Yeah, you're gonna have to do that. So guys, it's already 9:30. My gosh, this is sped by. I want to thank Laura so much for coming out and talking to us and kind of sharing and telling us actually numbers and things that she's doing. So if you could please give her a hand and thank her for that. And before we go, Kyla can actually shut down the thing. Before we go, if anybody